The Most Evil Serial Killers in U.S., Full List, and True Crime Shocker, Part 2. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Todd Kohlhepp. Not every killer hides in the shadows. Some smile, shake hands, and sell houses until their true nature is finally uncovered. Todd Christopher Kohlhepp, born in 1971, carried anger from a troubled childhood into adulthood. At 15, he kidnapped and assaulted a teenage girl in Arizona, serving 14 years in prison before starting a new life in South Carolina. For years, he built a career masking his violent tendencies until November 2003, when resentment over a perceived humiliation at Superbike Motorsports led him to gun down 4 employees in cold blood. The victims, Scott Ponder, Brian Lucas, Chris Sherbert, and Beverly Guy, were killed instantly. The case went unsolved for 13 years, haunting families and frustrating investigators. Kohlhepp's crimes escalated after he purchased nearly 100 acres of isolated land in 2014. There, he lured vulnerable people with job offers. In December 2015, Johnny and Megan Coxey were hired to work on his property but never returned. Both were executed and buried in shallow graves. Less than a year later, in August 2016, Kohlhepp killed Charles Carver and chained his girlfriend Kala Brown inside a metal shipping container. For 2 months, she endured captivity and repeated assaults. Her disappearance triggered an intensive search, and investigators finally tracked her location through cell phone signals. On November 3, 2016, deputies found Brown alive, chained by the neck and ankle inside the padlocked container. Sheriff Chuck Wright recalled, "She said, 'He killed my boyfriend, and he's killed others.' That's when we knew we had something much bigger." The following day, Carver's body was discovered. Kohlhepp, confronted with mounting evidence, confessed not only to the Coxey murders, but also to the long cold Superbike case. Investigators unearthed multiple graves on his property, confirming a trail of victims spanning over a decade. In May 2017, Kohlhepp stood in a South Carolina courtroom before grieving families. He pleaded guilty to 7 counts of murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and sexual assault, receiving 7 consecutive life sentences without parole. Judge Jimmy Henson told him bluntly, "You are dangerous and you will never be free again." Relatives of the victims sobbed openly. One mother told him her grandson hates you with his little heart. Kala Brown, the survivor, looked directly at him and declared, "You're the killer, not me." The case sent shockwaves nationwide, raising alarms about background checks, sex offender registries, and the ability of predators to conceal violent histories. International media highlighted the chilling detail that Kohlhepp left Amazon reviews about padlocks and shovels, joking about hiding bodies. From this tragedy, 3 lasting lessons emerge. First, never dismiss signs of obsessive anger or threats as harmless. Second, trust but verify when strangers offer jobs, especially in isolated settings. Third, digital footprints from phone data to online reviews can be life-saving clues in modern investigations. In the end, Todd Kohlhepp's story is not only about a serial killer, but about the fragile line between respectability and hidden violence. It reminds us that evil can wear an ordinary face, and vigilance is our only defense. Number 2. Gary Leon Ridgway. He worked at a truck factory, attended church, and lived in a quiet suburb. But for decades, Gary Ridgway harbored one of the darkest secrets in American criminal history. Gary Leon Ridgway, born in 1949, appeared unremarkable. A truck factory spray painter in Seattle, he blended into the working class. But between 1982 and 1998, he orchestrated one of the most chilling serial murder sprees in American history. Targeting sex workers and teenage runaways, Ridgway exploited their vulnerability. He picked them up under the guise of hiring or soliciting them, showed photos of his young son to appear trustworthy, and then strangled them, by hand, with ligatures even with their own clothing. Just outside the confined, "I hated most of them," Ridgway confessed years later. "I knew I could kill as many as I wanted without getting caught." The first bodies emerged in the summer of 1982. Dumped in or near the Green River in Washington state. Within weeks, 5 women were found. The killer earned his moniker early, the Green River Killer. Fear swept King County. As dozens more women vanished, law enforcement formed the Green River Task Force, one of the largest serial killer manhunts in U.S. history. Ridgway became a suspect as early as 1983 when witnesses saw 18-year-old Marie Malvar enter his truck. Police questioned him but lacked hard evidence. In 1987, they collected his saliva and hair, but the technology of the time couldn't match it to any crime scene. He continued killing for years, even as he married and maintained steady work. Investigators were left chasing ghosts, unaware that many victims' clothing bore microscopic paint spheres DuPont Imran, used at Ridgway's factory. The case broke wide open in 2001. Advancements in DNA forensics linked Ridgway's sample to semen recovered from several victims. On November 30, 2001, he was arrested outside the Kenworth plant. When confronted, he didn't deny it. Instead, he confessed. He was calm, calculated, recalled a detective, like he was describing the weather. In a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, Ridgway admitted to 48 murders. He led investigators to undiscovered remains and added a 49th guilty plea in 2011. Some bodies were recovered decades after they disappeared. In court, families of victims faced him with shaking hands and steady voices. Judge Richard Jones said, "There's not enough punishment for what you've done." Public outrage was reignited in 2024 when Ridgway was briefly transferred to assist in locating more remains. Critics questioned whether a confessed serial killer deserved leniency in exchange for information. But families, desperate for answers, supported the move. This case shattered assumptions about what evil looks like. It reminds us predators can hide behind routine jobs, fake kindness, and quiet neighborhoods. Never overlook patterns of control, especially toward vulnerable population. Always preserve even the smallest evidence, DNA, paint flakes, a witness account. And above all, never assume someone's normalcy equals innocence. The Green River Killer fooled a generation. Let's not let the next one go unnoticed. Number 3, Michael Gargiulo. They lived next door to him, trusting the familiarity of a neighbor. What they never saw was that he was silently studying them, waiting for his chance. Michael Thomas Gargiulo, born in 1976, earned chilling nicknames over the years. The Hollywood Ripper, the Chiller Killer, and the Boy Next Door Killer. On the surface, he was an unremarkable young man. But prosecutors later described him as a predator who watched and waited before launching knife attacks that left victims brutally mutilated. The first tragedy came in 1993 in Glenview, Illinois. Tricia Picaccio, just 18, was returning home from a celebration when she was ambushed on her doorstep. She was stabbed a dozen times. Her father discovered her body the next morning. Gargiulo, only 17, lived around the corner and was a close acquaintance of her brother. Suspicion lingered, but no arrest was made for years. By 1998, Gargiulo had relocated to Los Angeles, carrying with him a deadly pattern. On February 21, 2001, fashion student Ashley Ellerin prepared for a date. She never made it out alive. She was stabbed 47 times in her Hollywood home. Injuries ranged from deep chest wounds to a neck slash so severe it nearly decapitated her. Actor Ashton Kutcher, arriving late to pick her up, later testified he saw what he assumed were wine stains on the floor through a window. They were blood. In December 2005, 32-year-old Maria Bruno, a mother of 4, was murdered in her El Monte apartment. She had moved in only days earlier. Her attacker stabbed her 17 times as she slept and mutilated her body. Prosecutors said the violence was butchery. Once again, Gargiulo lived in the same complex. The cycle nearly repeated in April 2008. Michelle Murphy, 26, awoke to find Gargiulo on top of her, stabbing her with a knife. She fought back fiercely, kicking him off. As he fled, he muttered, "I'm sorry." In his rush, he left behind his own blood. That DNA proved decisive, linking him to multiple unsolved murders. Gargiulo was arrested in June 2008. Prosecutors built their case around a portrait of a meticulous stalker. Deputy District Attorney Dan Acamon told jurors, "Everywhere this man went, death followed." Survivors and grieving families filled the courtroom when his trial began in 2019. The jury convicted him of 2 murders and the attempted murder of Murphy. In 2021, Los Angeles Superior Court sentenced him to death. Judge Larry Fidler stated, "Mr. Gargiulo is a stone-cold serial killer." Victims' relatives wept. Ashley Elleren's father recalled his wife's primal wailing on the day they lost their daughter. Michelle Murphy, through tears, admitted, "Spending the night alone still creates a world of fear in me." In 2024, Gargiulo was extradited to Illinois to finally face charges for Tricia Pocaccio's murder, bringing her family a long-dead chance at justice. This case reminds us, always report stalking before it escalates. Never dismiss repeated uninvited visits, and recognize that safety often depends on trusting instincts. Sometimes, the neighbor you least suspect is the one you should fear most. Number 4. Israel Keyes. Some predators leave behind patterns, but this one built silence into his crimes. He stalked across the United States, leaving questions, missing people, and a trail of fear. Israel Keyes, born in 1978, would later be described by the FBI as a methodical serial killer. He was a construction worker, a father, and a man who lived quietly in Anchorage, Alaska. Yet, behind the facade, he buried murder kits around the country, boxes filled with weapons, cash, and tools. Preparing for murders he planned years in advance. Investigators said he studied serial killers so he wouldn't get caught, and for years, he didn't. In 2001, after leaving the U.S. Army, Keyes committed his first known murders in Washington state. He later confessed to killing at least 5 people there, including a couple taken from their home. In 2009, he abducted a woman believed to be Deborah Feldman on the East Coast, transported her across multiple states, and killed her in New York. He robbed a bank the following day, using crime to fund more crime. Perhaps his most chilling acts came in June 2011. Flying from Alaska to Chicago, he rented a car and drove 1,000 miles to Vermont. There, he retrieved a murder kit hidden 2 years earlier. He broke into the home of Bill and Lorraine Currier, abducted them, and took them to an abandoned farmhouse. He shot Bill and sexually assaulted and strangled Lorraine. Their bodies were never found. On February 1, 2012, his final known victim, 18-year-old barista Samantha Koenig, was abducted from her Anchorage coffee stand. He raped and killed her the next day, hid her body, and then left on a cruise with his family. Weeks later, he returned, applied makeup to her corpse, sewed her eyes open with fishing line, and staged a photograph with a newspaper to demand ransom. Her body was later cut apart and discarded in Matanuska Lake. Investigators tracked Keyes using ATM withdrawals from Koenig's debit card across multiple states. He was arrested in March 2012 in Texas, extradited to Alaska, and confessed to several murders. He admitted, "I liked doing it. I wasn't conflicted." Prosecutors prepared to seek the death penalty, but Keyes avoided trial. In December 2012, inside his Anchorage jail cell, he slit his wrists and strangled himself with bedsheets. He was 34. The families of his victims were left with grief and unanswered questions. Samantha Koenig's parents, who had deposited ransom money hoping she was alive, described devastation when her body was found. For investigators, his suicide meant the end of confessions, leaving a possible tally of 11 murders across America unresolved. From his story, 3 reminders remain vital. Always take notice of sudden disappearances and suspicious patterns. Understand that predators often mask themselves as ordinary neighbors, and share suspicions early with authorities before silence becomes tragedy. Behind the mask of normalcy, Israel Keyes showed that true evil can plan for years, strike in minutes, and vanish, reminding us that vigilance is our first defense. Number 5. Shawn Grate. Some crimes remain hidden until one desperate call for help changes everything. In Ashland, Ohio, a whisper into a phone would expose a man the press would soon call the lady killer. John Michael Grate, born in 1976, appeared to be just another drifter, but beneath that surface was a pattern of cruelty spanning a decade. His history with women was filled with control, violence, and choking. By the time of his arrest in September 2016, he had confessed to 5 murders and the kidnapping and rape of a woman who became known only as Jane Doe. The story began with Dana Lowry in 2006, a 23-year-old saleswoman whose remains were discovered a year later. In 2015, Rebecca Lacey's body was found in the woods, initially thought to be an overdose, until Grate's later confession revealed strangulation. By June 2016, Candace Cunningham, his on-and-off girlfriend, was dead. her body left near a burned-out house. The violence escalated in September 2016. Grate encountered 43-year-old Stacy Stanley at a gas station, offered help with her flat tire, then forced her into his car. He later admitted he made her perform sexual acts before strangling her. Days earlier, he had lured 29-year-old Elizabeth Griffith, binding and gagging her before killing her. Both women's bodies were discovered inside a house on Covert Court. For 3 days, Jane Doe was held captive inside that same house. Grate removed the doorknob from the bedroom so she could not leave. He assaulted and tortured her repeatedly, choking her to near unconsciousness. On September 13, 2016, while Grate slept, she dialed 911. Her whispered words, "He's asleep," led police to storm the house, rescue her, and arrest Shawn Grate. Inside, detectives uncovered the decomposing bodies of Griffith and Stanley. In hours of interrogation, Detective Kim Major listened as Grate calmly detailed killings. They were already dead, he claimed, suggesting women were beyond help. But prosecutors told a jury his acts were not mercy but sadistic domination. In May 2018, an Ohio jury found him guilty of the murders of Griffith and Stanley, along with the kidnapping and rape of Jane Doe. Judge Ron Forstafall pronounced the death sentence, describing the evidence as gruesome beyond imagination. A crowd in the courtroom applauded. Grate sat motionless, eyes downcast, as the weight of a death row verdict sealed his fate. He later pleaded guilty to the murders of Cunningham, Lisi, and Lowry, receiving additional life sentences. The Ohio Supreme Court upheld his death sentence in 2020. His execution was scheduled for 2025, but legal delays and Ohio's stalled lethal injection protocol continued to postpone it. The victims' families expressed grief and anger. Stacy Stanley's son said, "My mom did not deserve that." None of them did. Friends of Griffith recalled breaking down in tears when hope of her return vanished. From his crimes, urgent lessons emerge. Beware of those who insert themselves into vulnerable moments. Do not ignore escalating controlling behavior. And remember that predators often hide behind normal routines until it is too late. The case of Shawn Grate is a chilling reminder. True evil can masquerade as help, gaining trust in the moment you need it most. Number 6. Joseph Edward Duncan. Some predators wait for opportunity, but others prepare for years, stalking strangers with deliberate patience. In 2005, one such man unleashed terror that would horrify America and scar generations. Joseph Edward Duncan III, born in 1963, was already known to authorities as a violent sex offender. By his own admission, he had raped over a dozen boys before the age of 16. Paroled after serving 14 years for child rape, he carried a deep resentment toward society. On his blog, he once wrote, "My intent is to harm society as much as I can, then die." His crimes span states. In 1997, 10-year-old Anthony Martinez was kidnapped in California, bound with duct tape, sexually assaulted, and bludgeoned with a rock. A fingerprint later tied Duncan to the crime. In 1996, he had also killed 2 young sisters in Washington, though he was never prosecuted due to multiple death penalties already imposed. But his most infamous atrocity came in northern Idaho. In May 2005, Duncan targeted the Groen family after seeing children playing in their yard. Armed with a hammer, he entered their Wolf Lodge Bay home, binding Brenda Groene, her boyfriend Mark McKenzie, and 13-year-old Slade Groen before beating them to death. He kidnapped 9-year-old Dylan and 8-year-old Shasta, taking them to a remote Montana campsite. For weeks, Duncan tortured the children. He filmed the abuse, screaming chilling words, "The devil likes to watch children suffer and cry." Shasta later recalled being forced to watch her brother executed. Duncan shot Dylan in the head at point-blank range and burned his body. On July 2, 2005, a waitress at a Denny's restaurant recognized Shasta with Duncan and alerted police. His arrest led to the discovery of Dylan's remains and confirmed his role in the Groen family murders. Prosecutors called it one of the most disturbing cases in U.S. history. In 2008, a federal jury in Idaho sentenced Duncan to death for Dylan's murder and exploitation. Judge Edward Lodge told the court, "This crime shocked the state, horrified the nation, and devastated the family." In California, he later pleaded guilty to Anthony Martinez's murder, receiving 2 life terms. Throughout sentencing, Duncan sat emotionless, sometimes smirking, as families wept. For years he remained on federal death row in Terre Haute, Indiana. In 2020, Duncan was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. He refused treatment and died in March 2021 at age 58. For survivors, his death closed a haunting chapter. Shasta Groen said, "For so long I struggled with hate. Today my soul is finally free." Anthony's mother declared, "The world is a more beautiful place without the evil that is Joseph Duncan." From this tragedy come painful lessons. Never dismiss warning signs from registered sex offenders. Recognize how predators exploit moments when children are unsupervised, and speak out early when suspicions arise. Silence only empowers the predator. The story of Joseph Edward Duncan proves that evil, when ignored, grows bolder. Justice can stop it, but vigilance in our communities remains the first true defense. Number 7. Joseph James DeAngelo. Some crimes blur into memory, but others leave scars across entire states. For decades, California lived with an unnamed terror, an offender who changed identity as often as he changed locations. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr., born in 1945, once served as a police officer. Outwardly, he was a husband, a father, a man blending into suburban life. But between 1974 and 1986, he stalked communities under shifting titles: the Visalia ransacker, the East Area rapist, and later, the Golden State Killer. Investigators described him as a phantom who thrived on fear. His spree began with more than 120 burglaries in Visalia, where he ransacked homes, scattering women's underclothes and stealing trinkets while ignoring money. In 1975, he murdered journalism professor Claude Snelling as the father tried to stop him from abducting his daughter. By 1976, DeAngelo escalated. In Sacramento suburbs, he broke into homes of couples, binding men and assaulting women for hours. He threatened families with chilling warnings, stacking dishes on a victim's back and saying, "If I hear these rattle, you're all dead." At least 51 women were raped, some as young as 13. In 1978, Brian and Katie Maggiore were gunned down while walking their dog, silenced for crossing his path. He soon turned to murder in Southern California. Robert Offerman and Deborah Manning were shot in 1979. Charlene and Lyman Smith were bludgeoned with a log in 1980. Patrice and Keith Harrington were beaten to death the same year. His cruelty intensified. Manuela Whitthune, Cherry Domingo, and Gregory Sanchez all died by his hand. In 1986, his final known victim, 18-year-old Janelle Cruz, was left bludgeoned so brutally that her teeth were found in her hair. For decades, he vanished. Cold cases stacked up, his many nicknames confusing investigators. It wasn't until 2018, through forensic genetic genealogy, that DNA linked him conclusively. Arrested at 72 outside his Sacramento home, the so-called Golden State Killer was finally unmasked. In court, frail in a wheelchair, DeAngelo whispered guilty pleas to 13 murders and 13 kidnappings as part of a deal to avoid death row. Survivors confronted him directly. Rape victim Gay Hardwick said, "The gut punch was realizing my attacker was a police officer sworn to protect." Judge Michael Bowman told him, "You lack the courage and grace your victims showed." On August 21, 2020, DeAngelo was sentenced to multiple life terms without parole, the maximum penalty. He sat silent, eyes hidden, as victims called him a madman, a beast, and subhuman. The courtroom erupted in applause when justice was declared. The case sparked global debate. Author Michelle McNamara's work and the HBO documentary I'll Be Gone in the Dark pushed his crimes into public consciousness, while genetic genealogy became a powerful new tool in solving cold cases. From these tragedies come urgent reminders. Predators may masquerade as protectors, patterns of stalking should never be ignored, and silence only prolongs a criminal's reign. The Golden State Killer's legacy is not just in terror, but in the resilience of survivors, proof that even decades later, truth can break through shadows. Number 8. Robert Ben Rhoades. Some roads promise freedom, but others conceal predators who turn highways into hunting grounds. For 15 years, one long-haul truck driver carried a secret darker than the endless miles he traveled. Robert Ben Rhoades, born in 1945, lived as a trucker moving across America's interstates, but behind the wheel of his 18-wheeler, he created what the FBI later called a traveling torture chamber. His sleeper cab was outfitted with handcuffs welded to the ceiling, chains, whips, and what investigators described as a personal rape kit. Rhoades used it to abduct, torture, and kill hitchhikers, victims who thought they had found a ride but had instead climbed into a rolling prison. Catherine, his crime stretched from 1975 until his arrest in 1990. In that span, he is suspected of murdering more than 50 people, many of them young women who vanished without trace. Among his known victims was Regina K. Walters, a 14-year-old runaway from Texas. In haunting photographs later recovered from Rhoades' belongings, Regina appeared with her hair cut short, shackled in a barn, moments before she was strangled with baling wire wrapped around her neck 16 times. Her boyfriend, 18-year-old Ricky Lee Jones, was shot in the head and discarded near a Texas highway. Another couple, Patricia Candace Walsh, 24, and her husband Douglas Ziskowski, 26, were picked up in late 1989. Ziskowski was killed quickly, but Walsh was held captive for over a week, enduring repeated assaults before her body was left in Utah. In January 1990, Rhoades abducted 18-year-old hitchhiker Nicole Tuttle, holding her for 6 days, cutting her hair, whipping her, and forcing her into degrading acts until she managed to escape in Houston. The case finally broke on April 1, 1990, when an Arizona trooper discovered a terrified woman, Kathleen Vine, nude and handcuffed inside Rhoades' truck. Her screams ended the killer's long run of impunity. When agents searched his vehicle and apartment, they uncovered torture tools, photographs, and personal belongings of multiple victims. Prosecutors moved carefully. In 1992, Rhoades pleaded guilty to the Illinois murder of Regina Walters and was sentenced to life without parole. In 2012, he admitted to the Texas killings of Walsh and Ziskowski, receiving 2 more life sentences. Court observers recalled his detached demeanor, denying remorse. One FBI agent described him as arrogant, unfazed, a predator who believed no one would care about the forgotten people he targeted. The public reacted with shock. Media outlets branded him the truck stop killer, while the FBI established the Highway Serial Killings Initiative, connecting hundreds of murders to long-haul truckers. Books and documentaries spread awareness of the hidden dangers along America's highways. From this story, grim lessons remain. Predators exploit isolation and trust on the road. Apparent strangers may use positions of normalcy to conceal sadism, and silence in the face of suspicion allows predators to thrive. Awareness and vigilance are the strongest defenses. Robert Ben Rhoades' case revealed that evil can travel unnoticed, mile after mile. Justice caught him, but the lessons demand we never look at an empty highway the same way again. Number 9. Michael Madison. Some neighborhoods seem ordinary until a hidden stench betrays a darker truth. In East Cleveland, Ohio, the summer of 2013 uncovered horrors no one imagined lurking so close to home. Michael Madison, born in 1977, lived as a registered sex offender with a violent past. Abused in childhood, he carried deep scars that prosecutors later argued shaped his hatred of women. By 2012, at 35 years old, he had begun a killing spree that would last 9 months and leave 3 women dead. The first was Shatisha Sheely, 28, who vanished in September 2012. Madison admitted to choking a woman around that time and leaving her body in his apartment before moving it to a garage. In June 2013, 38-year-old Angela Deskins was reported missing. Just weeks later, on July 10, 2013, 18-year-old Sherelda Terry disappeared while leaving her summer job. Madison later confessed to raping and killing her. On July 19, neighbors complained of a foul odor coming from a garage near Madison's apartment. Police discovered the first body, wrapped in multiple layers of plastic bags. A day later, 2 more decomposing bodies were found. One in a backyard, another in a vacant home basement. All 3 women were bound, folded, and discarded as if they were trash. Madison was arrested the same day at his mother's house after a brief standoff. In questioning, he reportedly admitted to his crimes, telling police he had developed a hatred for the female species. Investigators also noted his fascination with another Cleveland serial killer, Anthony Sowell, who murdered 11 women. The trial began in April 2016. Prosecutors charged Madison with 13 counts including aggravated murder, rape, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse. Evidence of strangulation and sexual assault shocked the courtroom. Families gave emotional testimonies. Van Terry, father of victim Sherelda, said during sentencing, My daughter didn't deserve this. Seeing Madison smirk, Terry lunged at him in fury, a moment that went viral across news outlets and social media. On June 2, 2016, Judge Nancy McDonnell sentenced Madison to death, calling his crimes unspeakable acts of evil. He sat motionless, his face expressionless, while the courtroom erupted with cries and gasps. In 2020, the Ohio Supreme Court upheld the death sentence, though some kidnapping charges were overturned. His execution, initially scheduled for 2024, was stayed amid Ohio's ongoing moratorium on lethal injection. The case drew intense national and international coverage, reminding communities of recent tragedies like Ariel Castro's kidnappings and Anthony Sowell's murders. For Cleveland, it was another devastating chapter of women disappearing in silence. From this story emerge urgent warnings. Predators often hide behind familiarity. Ignoring early signs of controlling violent behavior allows escalation, and silence from neighbors or loved ones can delay rescue. Protecting each other begins with vigilance and speaking up when something feels wrong. The case of Michael Madison leaves a chilling reminder. Evil does not always hide in shadows. Sometimes it festers in plain sight, waiting for indifference to keep it alive. Number 10. Raul Meza Jr. Some predators disappear for years, only to resurface when the system allows them to slip through its cracks. In Texas, one man's trail of violence stretched across 4 decades, leaving families shattered and a community outraged. Raul Meza Jr., born in 1960, was no stranger to crime. By his teens, he had already been arrested for robbery and later imprisoned for aggravated robbery after shooting a store manager. In 1981, he was released on parole. Just a year later, in January 1982, he lured 8-year-old Kendra Page, sexually assaulted her, and strangled her to death. Her body was dumped in a trash bin near an Austin elementary school. Meza confessed and received a 30-year sentence, but under an outdated good time law, he was freed after just 11 years. The release sparked outrage. Protesters warned that a killer like Meza would strike again. He insisted he was a changed man, describing himself as a born-again Christian. Yet within years he returned to prison for parole violations, cycling in and out of incarceration until 2016, when he was finally free again. What followed would prove the protesters right. In May 2019, 65-year-old Gloria Lofton, Meza's neighbor, was found strangled inside her Austin home. Investigators discovered blood and a used condom, but her death was ruled undetermined. By May 2020, a DNA match connected Meza to the scene. Despite the evidence, no arrest was made. Lofton's daughters later said the justice system had completely failed their mother. 2 years later, Meza moved in with 80-year-old Jesse Fraga, a retired probation officer who had once helped him adjust to life after prison. On May 12, 2023, Fraga disappeared. A week later, police found him dead in his home, stabbed and strangled. Then came the confession no one expected. Meza himself phoned police, admitting to the murders of both Fraga and Lofton. "I'm ready and prepared to kill again," he chillingly declared. "And I was looking forward to it." When arrested, he carried a bag filled with a handgun, rope, duct tape, zip ties, and gloves, tools of a predator planning more attacks. Prosecutors indicted him on capital murder charges. Families demanded death, but Travis County District Attorney Jose Garza refused to pursue it, citing opposition to executions. In September 2024, Meza accepted a plea deal, 2 life sentences, 1 without parole. In court, he sat expressionless as relatives of his victims condemned him. "You are pure evil," one family member said. Judge Julie Kockerick told him bluntly, "You will die in prison." Public anger extended beyond Meza. Lofton's family blasted law enforcement for mishandling DNA evidence, delaying justice for years. Interim Austin Police Chief Robin Henderson issued an apology, admitting failures that left the community exposed. From this case emerge vital warnings. Predators often exploit trust and proximity. Systemic delays in evidence handling can cost innocent lives, and ignoring survivors' and families' voices risks repeating tragedy. The story of Raul Meza Jr. leaves a haunting truth. Evil paused but never disappeared. Justice can find him, but only after decades of preventable loss. Evil takes many faces: a trusted neighbor, a father, even a man offering help on a lonely road. These killers remind us that monsters rarely announce themselves. They blend in, they wait, and when opportunity strikes, They destroy lives in ways we can hardly imagine. But as chilling as these cases are, they are only part of the story. There are still names, crimes, and dark secrets we've yet to uncover, and in the shadows of America's history, more horrors await. If you want to uncover the next chapter of these shocking true crime stories, make sure you subscribe to Justice Reversed and hit the notification bell, so you'll be the first to see part 3 the moment it drops. Stay vigilant, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the most ordinary face hides the darkest evil.